So a lot of people on YouTube do these videos where they call them 5 things they hate or love about their car, but I have a couple more than 5 things, so we're just going to call this at least 5 things that I hate about this car. First of all is this stupid start button. I absolutely hate it. Call me old-fashioned, but I just like to grab a key and put it into the ignition and turn it. There's just something about that feels right. Especially in a car like this, and I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem if they just kept it to like performance cars, but I feel like it's something that, you know, a $20,000 shit box, you know, really shouldn't have a start button. You know, you're pressing this button expecting to happen, and half of those engines you can't even hear if they're on or not. It just doesn't really serve a purpose. I mean, it really only looks at home in like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari that has a, you know, crap ton of buttons and knobs on the steering wheel. Then it, you know, okay. But I don't understand this push for it in every single other car. So that's one thing. Next is the shifter here on the reverse lockout. You can hear that. So annoying. You know, you go and you shift. Sounds like jingle bells. So that's kind of annoying. I'm hoping I can fix that with a different shifter. What else? Headlights. These are kind of like a projector HID type, and the problem at night is that you really can't see the upper half. So if you're driving, especially anything that involves elevation changes, if you're going uphill, downhill, your field of vision's pretty terrible unless you turn your high beams on. So we're going to go ahead and turn it on. I'll get to some of the other points here in a second. I'm not really annoyed by that. I'm just going to turn around and pause here. Okay, next thing that I can't stand, and this isn't necessarily a knock against the car, it's more of a knock against Ford, is the OEM tires that this car comes with, which are Pirellis. Pirelli tires are the biggest pieces of shit that you could possibly put on your car, maybe outside of Kumho. Awful tires. I've never gotten more than 10 to 15,000 miles out of a set of them without being completely roasted. It's probably something that Ford puts on the car because they're cheap, and they do have reasonably good traction when they're new. Unfortunately, they don't stay new for very long, so they're sort of shitty. But they're cheap, and that's why they put them on the car. But I can tell you that whenever the fronts on this car are already kind of used up, this car has almost 14,000 miles on it now. Those Pirellis on the front are going to go very, very shortly. And I'll be going the route of either Continental or Michelin. That's kind of my brand of choice. I am seeing a lot of positive results with the Firestone Indy 500s, because those have a lot of properties of the Michelins, but aren't quite as expensive of a tire, really. So I might end up going with those, but I am looking for something other than these sorry-ass Pirellis. I would never, ever buy a set of these for a car by choice, and I would suggest that if you value your money, that you don't either. My next point is actually sort of a combination of things, and it's the gas mileage. And it's not even all of the gas mileage, it's just the non-highway gas mileage that's the problem. So the sticker on this car rates it at 15 city, 25 highway. However, it says, I think mixed driving you're supposed to get 18 or 19. That is not the case. Highway, it has no problems getting 26 or 27 miles to the gallon, which is pretty comparable to my old car. In my old car I used to get, I think that was, well, it was a 2013 V6, and the big advertising campaign back then in like 2011 was, it's the first engine to give you 305 horsepower and 31 miles to the gallon highway. It did not. The best that car could do would be about 28. And part of the problem there is I had the 331 rear in that car, which definitely impacted the fuel mileage, not in a positive way. But I think they revised those to be where they were supposed to be 29, but the best I could do on that car is about 28. And that's actually before they did a reflash for a recall somewhere between about 30 and 40,000 miles, and it kind of dropped my fuel mileage quite a bit after that. Anyways, moving on, moral of the story is it didn't get what it was supposed to get, and real world I got about 20 and a half, which I think mixed highway city, those were supposed to deliver around, well, sometimes I would get 21 to 22, but enough about that car. The problem with this one is it says 15 city, and you don't necessarily always get 15 city. Sometimes it hovers more around about mid-14s. It just barely kind of cracks 15 in the city. And that's not even necessarily city driving. That's, you know, I'm on a 45-mile-an-hour road right here. And I just filled up 4 miles ago, and I'm at 13.7 right now. Pretty bad. Now, I don't want to knock the car too much because I'll get into some other issues that the car had in a future video. But it just did get back from the shop, so I'm hoping that it does better after the things that were wrong. And the highway mileage is actually pretty impressive in this car, despite the power. I mean, obviously, you know, you have 435 horsepower at the crank. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago cars that had that kind of power just didn't deliver much above even low 20s. So the fact that this car is able to do 26 or 27 is pretty amazing. And I guess I would have to attribute some of that to the aerodynamics of this car being a little bit better compared to most other cars, and especially compared to most previous Mustangs. I mean, the S197s were just absolute bricks. That thing at 80 miles an hour, it felt like you're, you know, going through a wave of air. It was just horrible. So this car is very, very calm at highway speed. But the other part of this problem is that this is a performance pack car. So with the performance pack, unfortunately, in the manuals at least, which is what this car is, you are limited to a 3.73 rear. So with that, you have very, very short gear ratios, which kind of brings me to my next point, is I absolutely hate having 373s in this car. Hate it with a passion. That's probably the thing that I hate the most about this car. So right now I'm in 6th gear at barely 50 miles an hour, and that's pretty much where you're at for the rest of the power band. I mean, you can be doing 80, 90, 70, I mean, you're always in 6th gear. I mean, I can even ride this car down to about 40 miles an hour in 6th gear. It's just way too short. So I think 355s or 331s would serve this car a lot better. Everybody's, you know, saying, well, if you're 0 to 16 quarter mile and all this stuff, you know, isn't going to be as fast as you do 331s and 355s. I don't really care about a tenth of a second, but I do care about several miles to the gallon. And, you know, when people say, well, why did you buy a Mustang if you're concerned about fuel mileage? I expect a little bit more out of it. So, I mean, it's not unreasonable that these cars can get upper teens as far as the fuel mileage in the city and get, you know, upper 20s on the highway. That's what I bought the car expecting to get. Because there's been numerous other people on YouTube, even on the forums and such, that are getting much better fuel mileage than that. But I think it's a little bit absurd, and we'll actually get to see here in a moment. I'm coming to a red light. Well, I kind of got messed up, but anyways, 2nd gear, 3rd gear, 4th gear. 4th gear at 40 miles an hour is 2,400. That's a little bit too much. We'll go to 5th gear. Still at 2,000 RPM, barely cracking, well, not even 50 mile an hour, and I'm also at about 2,250 RPM, which is typically more than what I drive at. We'll go 6th gear. And 6th gear is actually reasonable at about 50 miles an hour, and I'm about 1,400 RPM. But still, just to get to 40 or 50 miles an hour, having to go through all of your gears, that's just stupid. So we'll go to a red light here. Now at first, and this isn't necessarily something that I hate about the car, but at first I didn't understand all the driving modes in this car. So, you know, I was driving along in normal mode and I thought, you know, this doesn't really feel that powerful. This doesn't feel like a 400 horsepower car. And then I discovered that, you know, with these modes, it does really change the attitude of the car. So if you go to like Sport Plus here, totally different car. If the light ever changes to green, I'll get to show you. This is like ludicrous speed here. I love it. We're not talking about things we love. That's in a future video. Oh my God. There we go. One thing that I did expect to have a little bit more of when I initially got the car was exhaust noise. This is relatively tame. Unfortunately, unlike the 2018s, the active exhaust was not an option on these cars. So you're kind of stuck with what you get from the factory, or you have the option to change it to something louder, which is probably what I'll do at a future point. Also, that brings me to my next thing, which is this ridiculous device that this car has called a sound tube. And it's basically this dinky little hose that's connected to your air intake, and it actually pipes in, I guess, resonance from the intake into the cabin of the car. It's a really stupid idea. I don't know who at Ford thought of that, but that is one thing that I'm going to definitely rip off of this car. It's just ridiculous. It looks ugly. It takes up space in the engine bay. Doesn't increase performance in any way, shape, or form. Just utterly pointless. Last thing on the inside of the car is the steering wheel. This thing is utter garbage. The material that's on this is like not real leather. It's like some kind of pleather. It's literally the same material that's used on the Focus, like the very cheapest Focuses. I know that because I had to drive one over the weekend for about 5 days while mine was in the shop, which I'll cover in a future video why that happened. But anyways, the material that's on this is probably the worst steering wheel in a Mustang since the Fox body. I think even the SN95s had a nicer wheel than this. And it's not necessarily, I'm not talking about the middle part here, that's, you know, cool, whatever. It's just the material. This is just, ugh, it's terrible. But it isn't too hard to actually replace these steering wheels, and I do have plans to put a GT350 steering wheel in here at some point. So that is definitely going to happen. But it just, you know, the rest of the interior in these is very nice. This just, the material just feels out of place. So my last thing that I really dislike is this stupid hood prop. Come on. This is like 2018. Why are we still doing this? These cars are fully capable of having hood struts. Even my last car, the 2013, I had to put those in. I was really hoping that they would do that on these. Unfortunately, I think the Shelbys are the only ones that actually come with that. But it is even something I actually already bought them, the Ford Performance hood struts. There's a number of companies that make them. It's something the car should have on it from the factory. When I bought my 2013, I asked the dealer why it didn't have it, and they claimed that it was a weight thing, which is utter ridiculousness. It doesn't really take up that much weight. This stupid prop rod isn't exactly weight-free either, but I'm sure the difference is probably like tenths of a pound at best difference between the two of them. Also, this is that stupid sound tube. It's just dumb. And I already got rid of one of the other things I disliked in here, which is the 5.0 engine cover, which probably weighs a couple pounds on its own. So, you know, maybe if they didn't put that stupid 5.0 cover, get rid of the sound tube and this hood prop, then they could, you know, have saved enough money and weight that they could give it hood struts, you know, something useful. So I'm pretty sure that was more than 5 things, so I think that's it for this video.